the American dream, the future of work, etc. So recent data shows that unemployment for recent college graduates is now at 5.8%, which is unusually high for this demographic. Even MBA students from elite schools are struggling to find work, and a lot of companies have pulled back on hiring. There's a lot of really doom and gloom headlines about AI and how it's going to wipe out a lot of white collar jobs. And I think this is just like kind of feeds into this whole larger idea about the American dream is dead. This belief that this story we had told about working your way to prosperity, that ladder has been broken, and kind of what happens next. And I want to talk about how that affects our money psychology. And I wrote about in my newsletter, the death of the American dream, what happens when people stop believing in the American dream, whether because of systemic barriers or just like different expectations. And I kind of talked about three different things. And the first is, arrested development. You see people that'll kind of be in this continual state of just never launching, living in their parents' home for longer, delaying these traditional milestones like getting married, having kids, buying a home. And I'm not saying it is completely on the individual, but that is just kind of a state that people fall into. It's sort of this freeze reaction. The second is we're seeing this kind of like rise of entrepreneurship through like influencers, the rise of influencers, like why climb the corporate ladder when you can build your own ladder? And, there are some benefits of being your own boss and, doing that kind of stuff. But I think there's a lot of downsides to gig work and, not having that stability that comes with different types of jobs. And I think, that narrative that entrepreneurship is salvation can be really harmful, and I think it's going to lead to increased harm for a lot of people that isn't going to be in that like 1% of earners. And the last thing is financial nihilism. If you believe that the game is so rigged, that the American dream is that dead, what is the point of doing any sort of financial planning? And of course that can hurt your own finances, but that also hurts the broader economy. If people don't believe in a society that by working hard they can get ahead, what is there for them, like what economy is there for them to participate in? And I think that can lead to a lot of really harmful, effects just like more broadly. And so I think, this stat is just an interesting indicator of, what is probably coming down the pipeline. But also it's important to think about how younger generations are thinking about the economy, thinking about economic participation, and thinking about their future.
College was the worst.
So what's going on here with college students not being able to find work? It's nothing new, really. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering back in 2011, and that was at the bottom of the housing market crash. So yeah, I graduated with a degree in civil engineering, so there was no jobs. Nobody was hiring. There was a couple of companies nearby that were hiring, but not a whole lot. And so I remember just scouring Craigslist all day, every day. I must have applied to like 80 jobs before I finally got an interview at an engineering firm about a about a year later. It took like 1 year for me to finally get an interview at a engineering firm somewhere. So, and then the guy that was hiring, he put out a job announcement saying he wanted someone with 5 years experience, but I applied anyway. So he gave me an interview, and then he hired me. And then after 2.5 weeks, he said, "You know what? I wanted someone with more experience than you. I wanted someone with 5 years experience." So he said, "Here's your last check," and out the door I went. So yeah, my first engineering job only lasted 2.5 weeks. I was really excited, but that was a really big punch to the gut. It wasn't until January of 2013 that I finally found permanent employment at an engineering firm, and I was finally employed in what I had studied. So it took me 1.5 years of job searching, applying for jobs, I applied to 80 jobs, not, hundreds like other people did. But yeah, what I did was I networked, I volunteered in construction projects, and eventually I found out, oh, so and so knows this person who's starting a engineering firm over here, and it just so happens he's looking for engineering interns to hire. So that's how I got my foot in the door.